All right, for the next sessions, session 6 of the 15th South China Sea Conference organized by the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam, focusing on energy at a crossroad, traditional or renewable energies. It is our honor to have His Excellencies Mr. Sean Perry Stay, Ambassador of Canada to Vietnam, as the moderator. Please.
Well, thank you very much. And once again, allow me to reiterate my thanks to DAV for another successful conference. The Canadian Embassy is very proud to offer our support to this important and rare opportunity for frank exchanges on some of the critical issues of our time with respect to the South China Sea. A lot of the discussion around the South China Sea focuses on the geostrategic interests, security, transportation. And this leads us a lot to talk about threats. And as political scientists, we often focus on the threats. But the South China Sea also offers important opportunities for cooperation and for sustainable development. Energy is one of those areas for potential cooperation. Often when we look at energy in the South China Sea, our minds focus quickly on oil and gas. And oil and gas is quickly associated with territorial claims and potential for conflict. But it's not just about oil and gas. As the world is tending towards sustainable development and the clean energy transition, our minds are turning towards renewables. And the South China Sea is an enormous source of solar energy and wind energy. To bring this point to the fore, I have to tell you that a couple of weeks ago, I spent a few days in Winay, just a two and a half hour drive on a new expressway from Ho Chi Minh City to the north. And I went sailing. So you go to Winay, you see a lot of fishing boats and you see a lot of wind turbines. I went sailing for 4 days with a social enterprise that has retrained fishermen who are finding it more difficult to find fish stocks and having to go further abroad, further from shore, to become internationally certified sail instructors. The wind presents us with all sorts of new opportunities for recreation, for energy, for tourism, and is yet an untapped potential. Canada recognizes this aspect of our shared oceans in our Indo-Pacific strategy. Those of you who remember me sitting on the stage in Da Nang last year, before the launch of Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy, offering my apologies for our late arrival at the game, now know that Canada has arrived in the Indo-Pacific with a very comprehensive strategy that includes not just peace and security issues, but also environmental and planet issues. We've announced a new shared oceans fund to help countries of the region deal with illegal, underreported, and unregulated fishing, but also to look at more comprehensive approaches to managing the ocean environment. We also have upped our development assistance to countries like Vietnam, the Philippines, and Indonesia. And in Vietnam in particular, we're supporting the clean energy transition, not just through the Just Energy Transition Partnership, but through bilateral assistance for offshore wind and other sustainable energy resources. So with that, I think we have a lot of opportunity to discuss the potential for energy in the South China Sea. And I'm delighted to moderate this panel with gender balance and speakers that I'd like to introduce very, very briefly here. Mr. Bjorn Zindler from the German Offshore Wind Initiative, Professor Nguyen Xuan Quy from the Ho Chi Minh City University of Technology, Dr. Aswani Dravid from the University of Petroleum and Energy Studies in India, and online, Dr. Dawun Jung from the University of Wollongong in Australia. So without further ado, let me hand the floor to Mr. Zindler.
Well, thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Xin chào, everyone. Thank you for having me today. I'm very honored to be part of this conference for the first time and will provide you with food for thought for productive discussions. My name is Björn Zindler and I work for the German Foundation Offshore Wind Energy. The German Offshore Wind Initiative is actually a project of our foundation. Yesterday, we heard a lot about the color gray. Today, we want to discuss the possibilities of greenification. Green stands for hope, for stability, for fertility and harmony. And the promise of the global energy transition embodies all of these values. Today, I would like to show you Germany's experience with the technology necessary for energy transition, the offshore wind energy. According to the World Bank, Vietnam has tremendous untapped offshore wind potential. Strong winds and shallow waters near densely populated areas enable the industry to potentially generate up to almost 30% of the country's electricity output by 2050. Now, let me shortly introduce you to the German Foundation Offshore Wind. We are an independent Germany-wide and non-partisan think tank that aims at fostering, promoting, and exploring the development of offshore wind and green hydrogen, mainly in Germany, but also in Europe and globally. We offer our stakeholders a networking and communication platform and underpin our work by participating in projects in various fields. Our curatorship represents the whole range of relevant stakeholders. But well, enough of the necessary self-promotion. Let's dive into today's topic. Let me begin with a thought experiment. Our planet's coastline is almost equal to the distance in between Earth and the Moon. Our 7 oceans cover around 71 of the global surface. Earth is officially home to 195 countries, of which 149 have access to the oceans. 40% of Earth's 8 billion population are living on the coast, and the energy demand is rising. At the same time, the burning of fossil fuels is driving climate change, threatening not only coastal populations worldwide. The green energy transition must lead to sustainable solutions and the decarbonization of our processes. Sounds hard to accomplish? Well, it might not be as hard as we think. Now, a single offshore wind farm located within a 500-kilometer radius could cover the global electricity demand. Simple as that. This circle would roughly fill the North Sea or fit in the waters south of Vietnam. If you do the math, you will find that roughly 514,000 offshore wind turbines would do the job. Well, this thought game is theoretical, of course, but it shows how achievable the ultimate green goal really is. The journey to achieve this goal in Germany began in 2010 with the commissioning of the first offshore wind farm in the North Sea. Since then, 29 offshore wind farms with a total installed capacity of 8.4 gigawatts have been commissioned, mainly in the North Sea, but also in the Baltic Sea. The majority of the offshore wind farms are located in the EEZ. A unique property of German waters is the limited space available. The German EEZ comes to 33,000 square kilometers and thus would fit 42 times into the EEZ of Vietnam. The limited space leads to conflicts of use and makes future co-uses necessary. The development of offshore wind energy in Germany has gone through several phases and regulation has grown along with it. In this graph, you see the annual growth of offshore wind capacity on the left axis, shown as bars for each year on the timeline. On the right side, you see the cumulative capacity, which is shown as a line on the time axis. In the infancy of the industry, the Renewable Energy Act, or EEG, regulated feed-in tariffs, and an inspiring expansion target of 25 gigawatts was set. The 2014 amendment to the EEG reduced this target to 15 gigawatts, in part to achieve greater cost efficiency in the overall system. In 2017, the EEG was replaced by the Offshore Wind Energy Act, or in German, Windseegesetz. This was supplemented by a site development plan, or FEP. All existing projects were given a shot to be implemented in a transitional system until 2025. Both the Offshore Wind Energy Act and the FEP have been amended several times since then, resulting in the adaptation of the auction design to a centralized system and also changing the remuneration regime. Induced by the first amendment of the Wind Energy Act, the expansion path was again raised to a 20 gigawatt target by 2030. The second amendment in 2020 extended this target even further and set the current targets of 30 gigawatts by 2030, 40 gigawatts by 2035, and 70 by 2045. The resulting annual expansion figures are steep, given the 8.4 gigawatts of capacity installed today. The latest amendment to the Offshore Wind Energy Act finally made the new expansion targets legally binding as of January this year. The targets are generally considered to be very ambitious, but at the same time, they send the right signal and provide an incentive to accelerate activities. A government agreement aims to further accelerate the expansion to 50 gigawatts by 2035. In 2045, the expansion of offshore wind will contribute approximately 28% to Germany's total energy mix. On the expansion path, I would like to highlight a few milestones. Germany's first offshore wind farm, Alpha Ventus, was commissioned in 2010. It's also the world's first deepwater wind farm. In 2011, EnBW Baltic 1 has been the first German commercial offshore wind farm in the Baltic Sea. Werra in the North Sea currently is the third largest German offshore wind farm in operation. The monopile foundations manufactured by EEW Special Pipe Construction were the largest foundations of their kind at that time. The story of EnBW He Dreit impressively shows how regulatory uncertainties and obstacles can affect the realization of a wind farm. From the first application in 22 through partial approvals, change of ownership, different park layouts and different implementation regimes, to the investment decision in 2023, the final commissioning is expected in 2025. That is 23 years after the first application. The reduction of the offshore expansion targets from 25 to 15 gigawatts and the uncertainties following a new subsidy regime in 2014, the so-called electricity price brake or Strompreisbremse in German, led to an expansion stop in 2021. That year, not a single new turbine was put into operation. This caesura in the German offshore wind development was an exceptionally hard stress situation for the German industry, resulting in many insolvencies and the loss of roughly 1/3 of all skilled personnel. Well, the next slide is on the development of the subsidy regime. It can be roughly divided into 3 phases. Offshore wind parks commissioned before 2020 had the choice between a basic and a compressed feed-in tariff option. This support scheme proved very effective for the initial phase of offshore wind deployment. The second phase was characterized by sliding market premiums. The bidder could set a price for which he was willing to sell the electricity. If the market price was lower than the bid, the difference was compensated for the government. If the market price was higher than the bid, the operator could enjoy additional profits. The third phase was started with the latest amendment to the Offshore Wind Energy Act. The corresponding auction system was changed into a process with a strong focus on direct payments by the bidder. The 3 phases also mirror the changing stakeholder engagement through the development of the German offshore wind market. The first phase was dominated by small engineering firms and small project developers. The first phase also saw a wide range of turbine manufacturers. In phase 2, the smaller firms were squeezed out of the market by utilities, and the turbine suppliers were consolidated to 3 participants. The third phase has opened up completely new dimensions and brought major oil companies into the game. For the moment, they have displaced other major players in the industry, such as RWE, Ørsted, EnBW, and Equinor. A few words on the phase 3, so the current auction design. There are 2 procedures. One for areas that have been pre-examined by the government agency for the suitability for offshore wind projects. and one for areas that need to be independently examined by a winning bidder. Pre-examined sites will be auctioned in one round of bidding based on the combination of the highest bid in euros and 4 qualitative criteria. The first of the criteria focuses on the reconcilability with nature protection. Second is the share of energy produced on the site that will be marketed via PPAs. Third is the bidder's contribution to the decarbonization of the offshore wind sector through the use of unsubsidized renewable energy and green hydrogen in the production process. And fourth would be the share of apprentices or trainees in the overall workforce of the bidder. Non-pre-excellent sites will make up a significant part of future auctions. The auctions again aim to determine a sliding market premium, including the government reimbursement if the price is lower than the set premium. The lowest bid wins the auction, meaning the sole right to conduct the planning approval process for the site, the right to receive subsidies, and the entitlement to have the turbines connected to the grid. If there are more than 1 zero bids, a second round of bidding will be held in which the authority will set a price to be paid for the site. If more than one bidder agrees to the set price, the process is repeated until only one bidder remains. Practice shows that several zero bids have been placed on all sites. The recent bid resulted in BP and Total Energy winning the sites in exchange for a total payment of 12.6 billion euros. This slide shows the complexities that impact offshore wind. The issues listed here all have their own challenges that can rarely be addressed at the national level only. Solutions are to be found in international cooperation that take into account the global energy transition and globally increasing expansion targets. I highlighted some of the issues that are particularly acute in Germany, but won't dive deeper into the topic due to my, I think, non-existent time left. I promise this will be my last slide. It is on some of the lessons learned through the German offshore wind journey. I've addressed some of the points listed here today, but others are still just as important. It is most essential to create a continuous and stable regulatory framework. Predictability and reliability are key for ensuring continuous engagement of investors and other stakeholders. Reduce bureaucracy. Planning and permitting procedures need to be as streamlined and transparent as possible. Public acceptance of grid reinforcement and expansion is important. Ideal solutions on paper often face opposition from stakeholders on the ground. The public should be involved early in the process to avoid uninformed opposition. Stabilize your supply chain by preventing a race to the bottom on prices. Last but not least, a suitable auction design and an intense and inclusive dialogue with the industry is vital to achieve targets efficiently. Teamwork between the administration and the industry is key to success. Harvesting wind energy is a great way of achieving the energy transition, and the South China Sea offers excellent conditions for offshore wind. I think countries in the region have a unique opportunity for regional and international cooperation that can also be the nucleus for further partnerships. And that's it from my side. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Bjorn. You've given us a lot of food for thought from the German experience that could be applied to both national and perhaps international contexts in the South China Sea. Next, we have Professor Hui, who introduced to us from the Vietnamese perspective, both the potential and plans for offshore wind development.
Next. Okay, and ladies and gentlemen, now today we presentation for the topic in the how to development and sustainable energy and utilization and implementation and circular economic in the Vietnam through in the BDPA, and as you know, this is the content for my PPT. And as you know, the climate change the change in all the world, and you see that many the disaster happen our countries in here, and the global climate change, we can how to control the temperature below the 2 degrees Celsius, and at least in the best case we how to control keep in the below in the 1.5 degrees Celsius on the world on the global, and in order to T and the UND they suggest in the SDG Sustainable Development Goals, we have the 70 target for the SDG. We implement on the country we can do it at achievement, and they might present and focus in the energy and number 7, and as you know, and COB conference of the party we started begin in the 1990 until now we in the 2020 and 21, and we Vietnam signed already in the COP 26, and what we have, and Prime Minister signed, they established in the national committee steering when what can we do now. You can see we have the 8 point for can do it here. Most of them they we how to energy transition and implement an economy. And in Vietnam, we have established the new rule from in the 2008 until now 2023, and we BDB, you can see at the BDB A approved, and the next sooner, and Marine Special Plan will be approved. The rule this is the milestone for the established in the rule in the how to development and climate change. And you can see and how we have the many major for the emission. You can see that energy have a lot of emission, 70 say around 70% for emission here, and now we can do the fossil fuel transition in the future, in the wind or solar, hydrogen, and how in order to get in the sustain energy development, and we can the how to harmony and balance, and three key work. The first, and economic development, and environment, and energy security. And you can see in the central area is one. We need to balance the partner relevant. And I show you in the data static and how to gas emission in Vietnam. You can see energy occupy in the last around in the 65% for emission CO2 and methane, and another area just smaller than. And I have the gas emission in Vietnam now. The starting from 2010 and 2014 and 2016 now, and around in 320 million ton CO2. And we do in carbon footprint by country. You can see in the diagram cycle here that in which country emits a lot of the CO2. You can see in the China 30% of the world, and the second country, United States, and another country, you can see that the India, and you see that the Vietnam now you see that the carbon dioxide emission and 3.727, and you see that in Vietnam the lower than in the CO2 emission per and average on the world. Now you see that in 4.76 ton per person, and average value on the world, and Vietnam still lost the room for the develop in a net zero sooner, right? I hope so. And now I present in current status and energy system in Vietnam, and energy and a lot of emission. And you see that the static in the how to develop in the electric commercial and installed capacity in Vietnam. And 2 years and the 2021 and 2022, we developed so fast for the installed capacity. You can see, and the reason for so fast because we established the FIT price for the wind power and the solar power, and that reason in many the investor they develop and the renewable energy. And until now 2003, and the fixed and reduce and reduce in the 20 about 15%. The statics in the solar is static in the wind farm in short term being green near in 4,000 capacity. And today, what the how many the capacity installed in the renewable energy? You can see that the today in installed capacity near the around in the 80,000 megawatt, maybe in the highest than ASEAN, right? And renewable energy capacity occupy 27% total the capacity, and electric generation just a little bit, and around in the from in 10 or the 15% total system. But the renewable energy develop is so far that reason, and the grid correction many area in the here, and I show you in the BDP what development and capacity. You see we focus on the development in LNG and renewable energy, for example in the wind power, especially in the offshore wind. And this is the diagram for the 2035 and the 2030. And I show you in the result and how to develop and offshore wind. Now you see that the South China Sea, Vietnam Sea, East Sea, you see that a lot of the wind speed very large, and we had the huge potential for develop the offshore wind. This is a plan, northern 3 gigawatt and southern and here. And the problem, and we have to complete in the marine and spatial planning and licensing and spatial geology survey. But I show you in the two offshore wind farm here, and La Gang wind farm and Thang Lo wind farm from the UK. And I show you we in Vietnam will be the future zero carbon and digital geo technology. We integrated the three integrated the EOR CO2 flooding and CCUS carbon capture, utilization, and storage, because we in offshore Vietnam, they have many the oil field production. We have platform. When we develop in wind farm, the wind farm generate the energy, and energy using the seawater hydrolyze and the hydrogen, and we using we collect in the CO2 because to and the fluid CO2 inject in the store. It store the store formation, and because the oil field take a long time for the deep the oil field. We can use it in the inject in the CO2. Possible why I show you Vietnam, we have the basin, a lot of the oil, and we have the infrastructure and pipeline and network and pipeline. We have and we easily collect in CO2 from in the onshore and the offshore. We inject again in the reservoir and possible and geology cross section here, and we capture in CO2, and CO2 enhance oil recovery, increase oil factor, and we have the three enhanced oil recovery, CO2 storage in deeply oil and gas, and combine with production of clean hydrogen in the future. That's the huge potential, and Vietnam can do it. And conclusion, I suggest, and what need to do, I suggest at the 16 point for 16 point comment, we can do it in the Vietnam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Quy. You've given us a great overview of the potential in Vietnam, and touched on a number of aspects, technical and otherwise, that are required to make offshore wind, for example, successful in the country. You mentioned also driving factors in Vietnam, including the environment and energy security. Dr. David has developed an expertise in the intersection of energy, environment, security, and strategy, and can give us a broader perspective on these issues. Over to you.
Thank you so much. So on day one of this conference, we talked and agreed on one thing, which is that South China Sea has become the hotspot of geopolitical theoretics due to contested waters, territorial disputes, resource exploration, and vital maritime sea lines of communication. So what I am going to do here today is look at the intersection in South China Sea between the rare earth material deficits within South China Sea, the geopolitical drama that's happening in the region, the ongoing energy insecurity in lines with the climate adaptation policies, and the role of non-state actors. Yeah. So if one thing that we sort of understood with the economic disruption that has happened all over the world by Russia's invasion of Ukraine is this amplified call for energy security and energy transition all across the world. So it has become so crucial that the IEA has predicted that in the energy demand is going to double by 2050 all across the world. And most of this demand is going to come from South Asia and Southeast Asia in particular. So as we transition to the cleaner energy, we are required to fuel our cars, heat our homes, and of course, power our industries. And when we said that most of this demand is going to come from this part of the world, I also mean the countries across the South China Sea region. The littorals of the South China Sea region has a major role to play in this transition. And this renewable energy revolution that is sort of brewing up in South China Sea is also because these countries in this region are very eager to know and learn and invest in new and emerging renewable energy technologies. So these are not the fully developed, economically rich countries, but these are countries carrying the unequal burden of rising temperatures. And these are mostly low-income countries, mostly vulnerable to to climate change, and especially at the receiving end of climate change-induced catastrophes. And for them, this energy transition from fossil fuel energy to low carbon energy is crucial. And this journey is very mineral intensive. So we require critical minerals and rare earth elements to aid this transition. And rare earths, for example, is a group of this 17 chemical elements in the periodic table, which are very difficult to pronounce. And they're usually grouped into two light rare earth elements and heavy rare earth elements. So why do we require them for energy security, especially in the South China Sea region? So from making solar panels, we talked about the need for transition and the need to explore the offshore wind potential in the South China Sea, which is abundant actually. So there would be a grid that we are thinking about, which is a mix of solar and wind and the waves and tides, right? So when the wind doesn't blow all the time and the sun doesn't shine all the time, so we need to have a mixed grid, energy grid that sort of becomes the foundation of the energy transition in this region. And from making solar panels to making wind turbines, rare earths are everywhere. So it's there in our cell phones, in our laptops, in our headphones, in this microphone, and even in this LED screen. So the demand, as predicted by IEA, is that there would be a 7-fold increase in the demand for rare earth materials in the future. And while rare earths are not as rare as we think, and they're abundant and they're everywhere in almost all the countries in the world, what we lack, what is rare in rare earth material, is the potential and the technology to refine these rare earth materials, and also the investments and the funding that's required to aid this conversion. So in the 1970s itself, when all over the world, we were sort of running around oil, and when Middle East had its oil and everybody was running behind that, China realized the potential for rare earths. So the statement by the Chinese leader that the Middle East has its oil and China has rare earths, and this was made in 1970. And we know that currently 63% of the renewable energy mining, 85% of renewable, rare earth mining, and 85% of rare earth processing, and 92% of rare earth magnet production is currently in China, dominating the global supply chain, global production, and distribution. So to aid this technological ambition that South China Sea nations have and its economic protection promises that it has given, refining for the rare earth becomes significant. And especially where I stand now in Vietnam as the second largest rare earth reserves in the world, only after to China. And okay, I ought to change this also. Yeah, so this is the slide that shows the percentage of division of the global rare earth reserves, especially in the northern and the middle provinces of Vietnam. Now, but most of these resources are untapped, especially in Vietnam. So there's been an MOU that was signed with Japan in 2019, and similarly an MOU with Australia in 2019. However, the investments in South China Sea region, rare earth material identification, production, and refining has been very sluggish. And the primary reason is because there is this lot of bottlenecks in knowledge sharing, and especially access to new technologies per se. And also this requires huge investments. And because and also there is a huge scope for environmental degradation. So in this whole race for climate adaptation and cleaner technology, when we also understand that rare earth is a crucial element that would aid countries for this transition. So how clean is going to be the rare earth mining process is also an important question to raise when we think about climate protection, environmental protection. And also a lot of regulatory bottlenecks in this amongst the countries around the SES. And when I talked about Vietnam having the second largest rare earth reserves per se in the country's line, the scope of the mineral deficits within the South China Sea region is yet to be evaluated. So the resource evaluation is still pending. And the access to these resources, rare earths and the tin, zinc, monazite, chromite, or all these minerals that is there in the South China Sea is critical. But who can mine these? It's who is going to mine this, right? So, so this is one. So when we say that a country's, 200 nautical miles within every country is its exclusive economic zone, where they would be tapping into these mineral resources within that region. Now, considering that we have one global ocean, which we have divided for our logistical ease into Pacific and Atlantic and Indian and all that, right? But it's all connected one sea, and 72% of the sea, the ocean is outside the exclusive economic zones of the world nations, where most of these resources, these rare earth materials and the critical minerals are deposited, which is considered, according to the International Seabed Association, as the common heritage of all mankind. Now, who is going to mine these resources? Is it going to be on a first come, first serve basis? No, those people, those countries, those nation states which have access to the technology, are they going to mine it on a first come first serve basis? And who is also going to look at the plurality of this the world's oceanic resources? Should it end up as an exclusive benefit of a handful of countries, or more so a harmful of companies. So this takes me to the increasing role of non-state actors in deciding the global geopolitical game. So this is both, I'm talking about both private entities and also about transnational actors. So these transnational actors like international intergovernmental organizations, non-governmental organizations, multinational companies, and also other non-state and non-sub-state actors like the producers and especially the commodity traders. So when we look at the 1970s, the Middle Eastern politics globally was sort of funded and ruled by the commodity traders, in especially in the Middle Eastern region. So how commodity traders influenced and in every sense indirectly funded the warlords who sort of held the supply chains of the hydrocarbons there. So the strategic opportunities and challenges that these non-state actors pose is a huge matter of concern, that especially in the case of South China Sea region, where you have very less international waters and mostly an overlapping exclusive economic zone and a lot of contested waters. So what's going to be the challenges that these non-state actors going to pose there, right? From mining of the rare earth materials to managing the global supply chain to the resource markets. So the non-state actors would be competing sometimes even with nation states, because most of these commodity traders in the mineral segment are richer than the nation states in the region. So I leave you with this question: when some of these commodity traders involved in the South China Sea are richer, and what would be the impact on the geopolitical and geostrategic scenario of this region, along with the environmental regulation? And my take on this is that there would be an overexploitation of these critical minerals. There would be harmful impact on the already fragile ecosystem in the region, and the geopolitical tensions would be heightened even more so compared to now. So thank you so much.
Right on time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Dravid. I mean, you've brought us back to the geopolitical components of all of that. We've heard from our first two speakers the enormous potential for offshore wind around the world, including in the South China Sea and for Vietnam in particular. But behind that are some technical restraints, the enormous importance of rare earths for that clean energy transition, but also the jurisdictional questions and the law questions and who gets to play in the South China Sea, also critical issues. Our next presenter, Dr. Jung, is going to take us a little bit further on that and looking at the conflict between offshore wind and navigational rights. Keen to hear about how this looks at both EEZs and beyond. Over to you, Dr. Jung.
Thank you, Sean. I would like to share the screen. Can you see my screen?
We
Share
can.
the screen? Okay,
Yes,
lovely. It's my great pleasure to be part of this prestigious event, and unfortunately, I'm participating in the conference online, but I would like to thank the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam for inviting me to this event. Following the brightest presenters who explained the current development of offshore wind energy and its potential in the South China Sea region, I'm going to talk about how to balance conflicts between the development of offshore wind farms and navigation rights, focusing on safety zones. With the new technological development, wind turbines become bigger and occupy more and more marine spaces. For example, in 2030, as you can see in the illustration, the height of a wind turbine will be 250 meters, which can be higher than the Eiffel Tower. And the largest offshore wind farm in the world at present is Hornsea 2 in the UK, consists of the 165 wind turbines, covers an offshore area of 460 kilometers. Then what is the exact size of a 462 kilometer marine space? To make it easier for you to understand, I asked ChatGPT this question. And ChatGPT smartly said that it depends on the size of the football pitches, but it can be 13,000 football pitches. So given that the huge maritime areas will be occupied offshore wind farm project, they can cause a significant challenge to other states' navigation rights. And I would like to focus on safety zones, which is a mechanism addressed in UNCLOS to balance these two conflicting rights. Safety zones aim to enhance the safety of navigation, to protect nature and function of offshore installations from the risk of serious collisions, and to prevent pollution of the marine environment in the event of collisions. Therefore, it would permit a coastal state to prohibit free navigation in the designated area. UNCLOS only provides a specific provision for the establishment of safety zones in the EEZ and on the continental shelf, which I will explain in the next slide. However, in the territorial sea, the coastal state enjoys sovereignty over the territorial sea. Therefore, the coastal state is entitled to establish safety zones in the territorial sea unless it prevents innocent passage of other states. For the breadth of the safety zones, I would like to give you an example of the UK safety zone regulations in the renewable energy zones. It is very interesting to notice that the regulations differentiated between construction and ongoing operation phases. In the case of construction or decommissioning of an offshore wind turbine, a safety zone would be 500 meters from the outer edge of each wind turbine. However, in the case of ongoing operation, safety zone will be 50 meters measured from the outer edge of each turbine. The establishment of safety zone in the EEZ is slightly different. Article 6 of UNCLOS stipulates that, quote, the paragraph 4, the coastal state may, where necessary, establish reasonable safety zones around such installations and structures in which it may take appropriate measures to enhance the safety both of navigation and of installations and structures, unquote. And paragraph 5 addresses that the breadth of the safety zones should not exceed a distance of 5 meters around offshore installations. An IMO resolution on safety zones and safety navigation around offshore installations and structures, which is non-legally binding, provides useful guidance on this issue. So the government may issue a notice for safety zones, including information on existing or proposed renewable energy installation and the date when a safety zone is to come into force. And then once the safety zone is established, then a vessel or individual is not allowed to enter or remain in a safety zone without permission. Now, I would like to talk about the breadth of the safety zones. The standard of 500 meters was first adopted in the 1958 Geneva Convention on the Continental Shelf. But in fact, the limit of the 500 meters followed the suggestion from the comparative study concerning oil and gas platforms. Then with the new technological development, we can ask a question. Is there a need to expand the breadth of the safety zones for offshore wind farms beyond 500 meters? In 2008, at the IMO, the US and Brazil submitted a proposal regarding the development of the guidelines for the considerations of the request for the safety zones larger than 500 meters around installations and structures in the EEZ. And the proposal intended to decrease the risk of collisions between ships and oil platforms in oil fields where offshore installations are highly concentrated and protect the marine environment that might suffer from such a collision. However, in 2010, the US withdrew the proposal because they announced that there was no need to develop guidelines for this reason. The standard of the 500 meters reflect only the characteristics of the oil and gas energy activities. But as you know, there are differences between oil platforms and wind turbines because the number of operating installations. And as I explained earlier, the largest offshore wind farm consists of around 170 wind turbines, and also they are expected to occupy much larger areas for 20 to 25 years. So considering these factors, if the safety zone established around offshore wind farms exceeded a distance of 500 meters measured from each point of their outer edge, it might be a serious threat to the freedom of navigation in the EEZ. So therefore, I would argue that the standard of the 500 meters for safety zones should be kept except in the cases specified in UNCLOS. Let's move to the coastal state enforcement jurisdiction. To what extent the coastal state exercise its enforcement in the safety zones? I have to highlight that it is different from the powers of coastal states in relation to offenses committed on the installation or platform itself. The ITLOS Arctic Sunrise case between the Netherlands and Russia raised an interesting question regarding the enforcement jurisdiction in the safety zones. On September 2013, Greenpeace activists who were using the vessel Arctic Sunrise having the Dutch flag tried to access the oil rig, which was operating within Russian Federation's EEZ. And the Russian authorities boarded and arrested the Arctic Sunrise vessel and detained its crew. And the Netherlands claimed that Russia requested the Russia to request the prompt release of the vessel at the ITLOS. And the question comes, is the coastal state allowed to extend the comprehensive enforcement jurisdiction to safety zones under Article 60, paragraph 2? In fact, this question was not fully discussed in the ITLOS order. However, there are two approaches to be considered. First, restrictive approach that the coastal state may request the vessel to leave the safety zone. And second, a broad approach which Judge Gosling from Russia and the dissenting opinion seems to take in the order that the coastal states can take a measure of the arrest of the vessel. And it should be highlighted that the coastal state can take appropriate measures under Article 60, paragraph 4, and it aims to ensure the balance of interest between the coastal state and other states. So I would argue that given the nature of the EEZ, I would argue the restrictive approach would be more feasible, should be considered in this context. However, if the ship has violated the laws and regulations of the state, it is totally different story. It is linked to the hot pursuit that coastal states can board, seize, and detention of a vessel in the EEZ on the suspicion of such offenses. And if the requirements of hot pursuit under Article 111 are satisfied. To summarize, with the development of a new technology of offshore wind farms, which occupy much larger marine spaces, there is a need to balance conflicts between the coastal states' right to develop offshore wind farms and other states' navigation rights. In the territorial sea, the coastal state enjoys sovereignty and it has a broad range of discretion unless it prevents other states' right to innocent passage. And the main issue would be in the EEZ. The coastal state should exercise limited enforcement jurisdiction in safety zones in the EEZ, with the exception that to ensure the safety both of navigation and of the artificial installations and structures. And again, as for the appropriate measures under paragraph 4 of the Article 60, what does it mean by appropriate measures in the South China Sea context? The term appropriate would seem to suggest a margin of appreciation for the cost state, but I would argue that still it should be understood within the UNCLOS legal framework, and it is also linked to the restrictive approach of the enforcement jurisdiction. Thank you for listening to my presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jung. I think the political scientists amongst us are now asking the question, wind farms, sustainable energy resource, or a political tool to assert rights in our EEZs. So thank you very much for that. We're going to open it up for questions now. There's a whole raft of implications for what we've heard today, and I'm sure that my colleagues around the room will have many questions for our speakers. So I've got one right here in the middle, and then I believe our Russian colleague in the middle as well. So we'll go 1 and 2 there, and we'll take a third one after that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And first of all, I would like to thank all the presenters for your very interesting presentation. First, I have 2 comments and 1 question to Mr. Zindler. The first one is, in fact, I want to add 2 challenges regarding the wind energy in the, I would like to say in ASEAN, not only in Vietnam. The first one is the wind energy depend on weather, not stable at all. And you see, when you have wind, not very strong wind like a typhoon, but there's wind, you have energy. But no wind, you have no energy. And in Vietnam, we have a proverb that during March, a very old lady can go to the sea. It means that very calm sea. And we do not have the wind at all. So, and relating to that one, so we need stable energy source to stabilize the grid. And in Vietnam, by May 2022, we have the installed capacity of wind energy is about 4 gigabytes. And we cannot connect all of them to the grid because we cannot exploit it. We need even this year, we were lack of energy during summer. Yeah, energy shortage, but we could not connect the wind energy to the grid because we cannot stabilize it. And the second one is the price of storage. Usually, I think the best solution for stabilizing the wind energy is using green hydrogen. And green hydrogen now is very expensive because you know that. Maybe, I am not sure, but the efficiency of electrolyzer of water to hydrogen and burn hydrogen to produce electricity is about 40%, around efficiency of 40%. It means that you use 10 kilowatt hour to produce 4 kilowatt hour, and it becomes very expensive, and it cannot compete. And if you sell it to industries, so they cannot make profit. See, so that one is a very serious problem. So I hope. So my question is, do you have any solution for this one? Yes. And my second question to Dr. Jung. I thank you very much for your presentation and very interesting. And I interest it in very much. So my question is, do you have any case that a coastal state, while installing the wind power turbines, the action of installing is considered as a violation of the right of freedom of navigation? Thank you.
Thank you. I have another question, I believe, in the middle. Yeah, just waiting for a mic. Any others who want to put up their hand while we're taking this one? Not yet. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador. My question is to the experts in wind and perhaps in solar energy. This continues the question of the previous speaker. We haven't talked about the environmental effect of the so-called green energy. We are reducing the carbon footprint, but at the same time, we're creating a whole new bunch of ecological problems like recycling the solar panels and the blades of wind turbines. There is confirmed negative effect of wind turbines on underground organisms as well as birds and fish. There is also damage to the seabed and so on and so forth. Isn't that by solving one issue, we're creating a bigger one that we aren't able to solve in the near future? Thank you.
Thank you. Last call for this round. I do have one online. There is a question online that's very close to our first question. It's what are the main challenges? And this is from Fan Xuanzong at ICEAS in Singapore. What are the main challenges with offshore wind development in Vietnam? What should Vietnam do to meet its target of 6 gigawatts offshore wind power capacity by 2030, as outlined in PDP 8? And what are some lessons from countries like Germany that Vietnam can learn from? Before I address that question, I'm going to actually ask Dr. Jung to respond to the question directed to her on any cases where there has been a violation of navigation rights by wind farms. And feel free, Dr. Jung, to address some of these other questions as well.
Thank you so much for your question. In fact, I'm not aware of the very specific incidents or case relating to the violation of the freedom of navigation. And given the limited time, I have not touched on the navigation impact assessment. But because the wind farm can cause very significant challenges to the navigation issue and to other countries. So safety zone is one of the mechanisms to solve this issue, but also the other mechanism can be called navigation impact assessment. So the European countries like UK or Netherlands started ask investors or carry out by themselves or state by themselves to carry out the impact of the offshore wind farms on the navigation, and they try to reduce the collisions between the offshore wind turbines and the other states' ships. And as for the environmental challenges, I do agree with that. This is also one of the significant challenges arising from offshore wind farm or offshore renewable energy activities generally. And as he mentioned, that underwater noise or the disturbance to the migratory species can be also very significant issues as well. And as for the European countries, in fact, at the international level, there is no clear standard on this issue. So there are a number of international organizations relating to the marine species. They adopted several resolutions and they're recognizing the serious issues from the renewable energy activities. But most of the guidelines or resolutions are not legally binding. But as for the European countries, EU directives or they have their regional the EU directives provides a very there's some sort of the regulations for the environmental challenges, and then there is also the regional the institutes provide the guidance as well. And I believe that because the offshore wind farms can be very site-specific activities, and then it also needs to develop the database on the environmental issues from the offshore wind farm. And this can be quite legal gaps in South China Sea or in Asia generally. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that. Panelists, can we stay on that topic just for our first response before we get to the particular challenges for Vietnam? And the question there is, I mean, what are the other ecological impacts and challenges of offshore wind? Maybe I could start with Dr. Dravid.
So even just like how offshore wind, the turbines and the solar panels, even rare earth mining can create radioactive waste. And while we are also mining for rare earth, there could also be other materials that would be coming out from the Earth's crust, which we do not really know the scope of its damage that it can be caused. And even within the ocean, when we are mining from the deep oceans, it's through a process of a vacuum. So it's not just the rare earth material that you're like sort of breaking out. There are rocks that you're breaking out through a process of vacuum. And that whole mining process is gravely environmentally damaging. So this question is very, very significant. We ought to have more conversations around clean transition. So are we really transitioning to clean energy while we are talking about these technologies, or can we also have new technologies which is probably safer for environment, but that would require a lot more of conversations, not just between policymakers and political leaders, but also scientists and geologists, and it's like a wider discussion that we ought to have. And like there was this news that came up last week from one of the US coasts that there was some whale accidents that happened. They were like just dying on the shore, and this the news article read that it could be a potential impact of the offshore farms in the ocean, and that it would have damaged the communication lines and they've probably come to the shallow waters. So there ought to be more conversations around this topic.
Thank you. I mean, we're seeing an enormous potential for offshore wind in the South China Sea, but it's not a panacea. Maybe one of the challenges raised is the stability for the grid. Maybe Dr. Thuy, I can ask you to address how can Vietnam address those challenges?
I answered the question in the audience from the online. How can with the main challenges for that? The first we have the 5 point, the first and regulate framework, and now in the BDB approve, but we need to approve sooner for the national special marine special planning sooner. Now in the government prepare near the condition, and I think that the end of I hope so in that in this year and then the sooner the next year, and we approve government approve sooner. And the second we worry about in the grid connection, because when the renewable energy connect in the centralized network and we make the problem, and when the low frequency and that thing we need to improve the grid connection, and we must to update and establish in a new smart grid. And I think that a second and third we need the fund, we need the money, and I think that the international organization and support for in Vietnam, and how to support in the green finance and investment for we established an offshore wind farm in the infrastructure. And the next step and the 4th point, and we worry about in the environment consideration, but I think that in the onshore and nearshore, we see that the impact strong for in the western area in Vietnam, but in that reason and government they design in the offshore. I think that the offshore a little bit in the impact because we do not use in the land user and nearshore and onshore we take much the land use. I think that the fit and we how to improve the local supply chain and infrastructure, and we need to localization supply chain, improve in the technology and development and the offshore wind we challenge it in the operation and maintenance because we depend on the weather and geographic challenges because and from the October and December we using the package typhoon and we have the together and so the treatment and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hui. So, Mr. Zindler, what can Vietnam and other countries of the South China Sea learn from the German experience with all of these issues?
Okay, thank you. First, maybe let me address the question of the unstable weather and the transmission grid and so on. So I will not deny that there are challenges to the green energy transition, right? But I mean, burning fossil fuels is not really an alternative. So in the long run, we have no other option than putting the green energy transition into life. Regarding the unstable weather conditions, of course, if you choose one of the technologies, there will always be days where you do not produce energy, but it's all about the energy mix. So it's not only offshore wind or solar, but a lot of technologies that contribute to the total energy mix. And there will always be energy available through one of those technologies and enough of it. So offshore wind plays a crucial role in this because it is almost baseload capable. So over the year, you will have 4,500 full load hours from offshore wind, and this will be enough to cover the base load. Regarding the cost, offshore wind, especially as of 2023, is cheaper than coal and any other fossil fuel. So right now, the levelized cost of electricity, it is lower than any fossil fuel. And this is true for all the green energy technologies. So yeah, green energy is cheaper than fossil fuels. And what can Vietnam learn? So I think global expansion targets are leading to a competitive situation for scarce production and construction capacities, right? So it is important to create a safe and a stable environment to allow the industry to grow. So regulatory framework, as I said before, is the most important. So you really need to streamline your processes to give the industry room to grow, right? Yeah, I think.
Thank you for that. I'm going to scan the room, especially for gender balanced questions. While I'm doing that, I've got one in the back. Okay, let's go ahead. I've got a couple online here too. Let's go ahead. Far in the back.
Thank you very much.
No, excuse me, sir. No, I've got a.
No, not me.
In the back. We'll get to you. We'll get to you.
Hi, are we just talking theory in the South China Sea, or how much development or exploration is happening already, and how much is likely are you expecting in the future?
Great question. others. Okay, we'll come back to you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. In fact, I understand that the price of wind power is not high, but the problem is not stable. And let me say about the last summer in Vietnam. We ran out of water, no water at all, and we have the another renewable energy, that is the solar radiation, the solar power plant, but during the night, no. So we cannot use wind because we have to stabilize it. You in Germany, it's easy for you. You can use the electricity from France and from other countries, and you also have the nuclear power plant. That's why it's easy for developed countries. For developing countries, it's really difficult. And I would like to add another challenge. On surveys in UK found that 1/3 of the respondents one-third of the people who were surveyed about their intention to have a vacation at a coast after a wind power plant was constructed other place, and 1/3 of them say no. It means that the wind turbines should be located far from, because it changes the landscape. And people do not want, 1/3 of the people do not come back when they see the wind turbines. It means that they have the solution that the wind turbine should be constructed about 10 kilometers from the site to preserve the landscape for tourism. Yes. So those one, I think we should mention it in promoting the wind. I agree that with a net zero. Now, if we're going to achieve net zero emissions, so we need the renewable energy. That is a wind power is very, very important. But we need to address all aspects and know all the risks, yes, and how to overcome such challenges to get the sustainable development. Thank you.
So I won't say cynics, but I say we may have some skeptics about wind power development in the South China Sea here. And that echoes some of the questions that I'm getting online. One around marine scientific research for energy exploitation. Can this be trust? This can be used for other purposes. How can countries minimize this situation? And I'm reading the risk of research being used for other purposes. Another question online, how likely it is that the South China Sea claimants can actually cooperate with external partner parties in maritime spatial planning for renewable energy. So if this is going to be a scalable solution through the South China Sea, can we have enough trust in the region to cooperate? Dr. Jung, can I start with you online to respond to any of those questions?
Yes, those are great questions, and I feel like they can be of my further research topics. And as for the transboundary MSP, that is a great idea, but at the same time, there are so many different, but MSP is mainly the political decision process, and then it depends on how to make the priorities as the key objectives to achieve. So I believe that cooperation is key, but at the same time, there should be a lot of the stakeholders like fisheries industries and aquacultures and shipping. They should be considered in the big picture. So it would be a great idea, but it can be also quite challenging to take into account all the different stakeholders and users. And thank you.
Great. And to my panelists on stage, who would like to jump in?
I would like to answer this question on how likely is the case of SES claimants cooperate with external parties in maritime spatial planning for renewable energy. So one of the questions that we encountered even prior to this is this question on environmental damage that the new and renewable energy technologies can bring in. So one way to sort of reduce is careful, considerate marine spatial planning that we can do in the region. And also this conversation that we had yesterday on trust and fear. So the SES countries, the littoral countries in this region require investments and funding to spearhead their transition to clean energy. And there are many countries, like, for example, even currently, like yesterday I was listening to this about Singapore signing a deal with Vietnam for buying offshore wind energy from Vietnam. Similarly, they've diversified their supply chains and have signed agreements with Laos, with Cambodia, with Malaysia and Indonesia. So the scope of a one grid from South China Sea, like to generate electricity cooperatively amongst the SES claimant states out of South China Sea, and to share the energy through one grid could be one way to answer this energy insecurity that's looming in this region, because we would require that even he was talking about the fact that we would have to transition from fossil fuels. And imagine the energy demand doubling in the next 10 to 15 years. And where would this energy come from? We do not have enough fossil fuels to burn. So we have to look at these natural resources that we have and share them. So having a shared resources for our shared concerns is a one way to go. So that is the fear element of it, that we can sort of use, because energy insecurity is one of the biggest fears that the region has, and cooperate. And where the trust element comes from is who's going to bring in the money for that, because it's not going to come from within the region. We do not have the money to source for this. And where's this technology that's going to come? So one factor that we were talking about, regulatory framework. So if we can reduce the regulatory bottlenecks that is there, and there can be enough political will to transition, and then the money would come. That is.
Let me once again respond to the public acceptance question. So let me give you an example from Germany. So we had those issues too, of course. I mean, it's a new technology, landscape is being changed, and people have to get used to that. So the example is on the island of Heligoland in Germany. And so this was always a tourism spot. And so nowadays there is a large wind park just in plain sight from the island. And so in the beginning, it was hard for the residents to accept the idea of offshore wind and changing the landscape. But then there were a lot of discussions with for example, our organization. We do public acceptance workshops, stuff like that. And the mayor of Heligoland was very eager to get his residents behind him and to get this park accepted. One, for the benefit of the electricity, of course, but also he was really, he thought it would be an opportunity for the tourism too. And yeah, he was proved right. Yeah. So nowadays, the offshore wind park is a tourism magnet on Heligoland. So there are dedicated cruises into the wind park for tourists to see this technology, and they're really, yeah, it's awesome to see. And so I don't think it's a question of I think it really is possible to get the public to accept this technology through a lot of groundwork. And so, yeah, this takes time, but I mean, this example shows it is possible and in a very positive way.
Thank you. We are past our time. And so let me conclude here with a note of hope. And one that I hope will prove the value of having more women's voices at tables such as these. I'm going to recall Dr. Kirchberger's comment yesterday about her dream at one time of a global commons of the South China Sea, a shared resource. I can't remember how you put it, Dr. Kirchberger, but there was a note of hope earlier on that you gave us. And Dr. David noting that maybe there's a way for us, countries, claimant countries of the South China Sea, to look at the resource available as a whole so that it could be exploited under one grid. Everyone shares a common need for clean energy. And if we could bring folks together, that might be an idea. As some were saying yesterday, we need more confidence building measures amongst countries in South China Sea. Maybe one small bit of developing energy for our common prosperity would be one of them. Thank you all to our excellent presenters, including Dr. Jung online. Thank you for joining us. And thanks for everyone for your active listening and participation. Enjoy your lunch.
All right, thank you, everyone. The lunch will be at the same place as yesterday, so please follow our reception team over there. And if you haven't done the QR code scanning for the survey feedback, please take a few minutes to do so. And speaking of female presence, we are going to have the honor to welcome Mrs. Paula Pampolini, the Acting Managing Director for Asia and Pacific at EEAS, for the keynote at 2 p.m. On stage. She will be joining us via